Hola, ¿cómo estás? To catch more flies with honey, but to catch more flies with honey, but all right, those of y'all who are new, don't know who I am, I invite you to check out the description box, as well as well over 2,000 going on 3,000 videos that I've accumulated over the years. That's a combination of my own designs and content, and content creators that have that I vibe with on some level, whether it's something that they said, something that they do. You're gonna get a mixed bag here, okay? All of the disclaimers and all of the legalese is also in the description box, okay? To bear with me, let me double check something here. As I was saying, all of the legalese and disclaimers is in the description box. Anyway, yada, 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 bada boom, bada bang. Okay. So, ain't nobody calming down until justice is served. So, but the title says to catch flies with honey, but to catch more flies with honey, but okay, so this is possibly not going where y'all think it's gonna go. Okay, I just want to say that first and foremost, the saying, where did it come from? Like, who wants to catch flies, by the way? Sometimes we're just saying stuff and it's cute and we've been saying it for generations, and I get the premise. It's like, flies or buzzards, they swarm around anything sweet, food, all that good stuff. Okay. The saying is you catch more flies with honey than vinegar. So the whole premise is by being sweet, right? By being kind, by being friendly. Okay. There's also scriptural reference, for those who like to reference, whether that is the Eastern philosophy, um, just spiritual books, philosophical books, including the Bible, okay, where there are wisdom principles in there. But the whole premise is kind of like one of the scriptures that says, he who wants friends must first show himself friendly. Okay, some of you all might remember that. That might not be it verbatim, okay? But he who wants friends must first show himself friendly, okay? And the secular sense, you can catch more flies with honey than vinegar. I don't want any flies. So anyway, it takes my brain to go there, right? Oh, really? It's like, only she gonna do that. Ain't nobody else thinking about that. Okay, I agree. Now, just this is gonna turn in a way that no one's expecting. I actually agree with that. I've lived a lot of my life like that. It just turned into people pleasing. But let me explain. Okay, because I am a premise of that. You want friends, show yourself friendly. Nobody wants to be a friend with Grumpy Grumpersons from Grumpinsville. You know what I'm saying? I get that. Nobody, come on, you want friends, you got to be warm. You have to have an opening posture that says, that gives off, I'm open to talking to your ass. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, you have to give off something. Versus the closed offness. Oh, but there's some caveats coming. Okay. Because I 100% agree. Okay. When we ask ourselves the questions, who are we more likely to converse with? Who are we more likely to, you know what I'm saying? It's going to be somebody possibly that comes off. No? Yes. Now, here's where things get tricky and sticky. And some of you out there, you may experience this, which makes you scratch your head because you know all of the sayings. He who wants friends must first show himself friendly. You catch more flies with honey than you do with vinegar. In other words, be sweet, be kind, be warm. But some of us, it's at some point it started to have an adverse effect versus the effects in which we intended. I know that sounds weird, doesn't it? Case in point, you you show yourself to be friendly. You show yourself, let me give some examples. Hey, I'm a team player. Hey, I'm not allergic to work. Hey, I can do something. Hey, I can, I can volunteer. Hey, I can, you show yourself to be those things. Not saying it, but like show up and offer. No? Okay. But what if you receive an adverse effect to that? It gets mistaken either as not authentic, it gets mistaken as kissery, it gets mistaken or even shunned. Like it's like you're trying to be those things and it's only further triggering people's things, unbeknownst to them, unbeknownst to you. And you get that from their reactions, not so much what they say. Whether that's, because language, now I might be wrong on this, okay? You got to double check some facts. But language, communication is said to be, is it 80% body language? Or 90%. Like I said, I might be a little bit off on the math. I have to, go back into that. But what does that say? Pardon my son there. What does that say to us? If communication is more about all the other things than it is the verbal. That's trippy. So that means it's facial expressions, body language, things not said.
Just keep thinking as hard as it can.
All those things. Now, bear with me, because this is what we're not going to do. I've gotten all too familiar with the antics. Okay. What do you do with that? Now listen, I'm only proposing this for some of you out there. Whenever you finally click on this video, it's just going to enlighten you even more than you already are. It's going to help you to understand that, hey, you did do those things, because some of us do those things. We believe those things. And then people sometimes then will either try to put you in an eternal role of people pleasing, where it's like they mistook that for some kind of a weakness or some people pleasing or competition. Some cases you're trying to show yourself these things, and then the others that are there are getting activated because maybe you see what I'm saying? Even though that wasn't your intention, you were showing yourself friendly. You were trying to, show, the sweetness, the kindness, the team player shit, hey, because the world complains about nobody wanting to do nothing. So you show up as somebody, hey, I know this is unorthodox. I know this is, unofficial. I know blah, 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 but I'm not allergic. I ain't nobody scared. I'm not scared, of, and I'm scared of work. Or just contributing. When you are whether you're joining a business, a job, or an agency, an organization that's providing, shit. So you're trying to, hey, show up to prove that everyone is, you're trying to show up to prove. It's fascinating to prove, like, hey, this is not just a bunch of words, and this is not just yet another entitled mofo. Because that's what people on the other end begin to feel or think. is just another entitled mofo with a victim mentality. Even though there are some people that are actually being victimized versus a victim mentality, that's a whole nother ball game. I don't want to get too deep into that either. Because I get that. I have respect. I get it. I've seen it. So I get it. Yeah. Eternal victim. But there are some people who are being terrorized. And if people would pay close enough attention, they would have saw the victories and successes that people have gained, which poo-poos and shits over the whole narratives that they're trying to create. I was working for a year and a half with a company. I received a promotion within 4 months. I was well on my way to receiving another. And I dealt with sabotage there. We're not gonna get deep into that, but this is life. And we're lying to ourselves if we're pretending like this kind of stuff doesn't happen in the workforce. Because it does. Was it for lack of being friendly, or was it for you're not being received? Because how far do you go with he who wants friends must show himself friendly? How much friendliness do you show before you catch a clue that perhaps they don't want your friendliness? That perhaps they have a predisposition, a predetermined script program running to not like you. To oppose you. No matter which way you flip the pancake, darned if you do, darned if you don't, catch 22 type vibe. If you're friendly, it's not received. If you don't show yourself friendly, you're not a team player. You're antisocial, grumpy grumpinsons. If you show up making yourself available, you're a bugaboo. If you don't show up, you're a lazy good for nothing. Told y'all this wasn't going where you think. I actually agree. I'm more grounded than I'm given credit for. I love that because it's like I'm an enigma. I love that because people assume all sorts of shit based on their own shit. But I actually agree. I have stories. For example, for about a year, I want to say maybe 6 months to a year. This is eons ago, by the way, back where, in San Bernardino County, where my son grew up, things of that nature. And while I was going through college and different things, because I done a lot of things. I'm 50 years old, got education, a couple of different backgrounds, like 1 or 2 classes away from my degree in one area, did complete some other programs, worked in behavioral health, worked in a hospital, worked in dental field, worked in case management. I mean, I've gotten a pretty diverse, worked in tech, worked for Apple. You'd be surprised. I'm going to just say that. You'll be surprised. Okay. Now, but through different seasons that I went through, especially when I was much, much younger, anytime like there was an issue that arose or a gap in my life for whatever the reasons were, in some cases it was possibly sabotage on top of some of my own stuff, just like everybody else, when you're coming up, going through life in your early years. No? Okay. So I would still, back then, I had this thing of wanting to remain fresh and productive no matter what was happening to me. No matter what was happening. That was an attitude that I had. I wanted, because I felt like it made you more If you can do this, then it'll make you more appealing when you do try to get back into the workforce or a business or whatever. So I would volunteer a lot. That's something a lot of people don't know either. I would fill out the official forms. For some of these places, you had to complete an official application, and you have to be processed in background as like anything else, especially if you're going to be around children and stuff like that. So I volunteered and learned a lot, like at libraries, and I got to know a lot about the behind the scene type of stuff there. And in that, again, this is showing up. I'm going somewhere with the story. He who wants friends must show himself friendly. You catch more flies with honey than you do with vinegar. Okay? You show up. You show up. You present. Hey, I'm not being paid to be here, but I'm going to show up as if I am. In that case, it wasn't even that I was getting a service. And that, as it pertains to that, it was just me. I wanted to contribute, and I wanted to stay fresh and active, because at some point when you're not doing something for so long, you can kind of start feeling like you're in a, and it's like you get up, it's like shit, it's like get up, bitch, just fix your wig, and huh? Yeah, okay. And that benefited me greatly. I met beautiful people there, but I also seen, this is just the nature, in my humble opinion, a human, it's just what it is. It's a mixed bag. In this case, I saw some beautiful things come of it. I worked for a lady there I'll still say, she's possibly, even though she was unofficially my boss, but she was my boss. Okay, even though I wasn't, paid, she was my boss. She was over, blah, blah, blah. I will still stand toe to toe, flat-footed, and say she is possibly one of the best bosses. I think I have two that I recall. One from a paid job, and then one in her case, like I was volunteering. One of the best, sweetest, kind, whoopsie, that I recall, very patient, very warm. I mean, she taught me a lot too. It wasn't that she was just, oh, sugar, slurpy, sweet, but she taught me a lot, and she honored me and recognized it. She was healthy. I didn't trigger this particular lady. Okay, nothing about me, and I was younger and hotter. Okay, and intelligent, but nothing about me bothered, brumped up to make her side eye me and shit and whoop, you know what I'm saying? To make her, y'all know that vibe. I call it the stank vibe. Okay? For no reason. But we be giving, never mind. So that, really warmed my heart, and it really was encouraging, and it really fostered a whole environment of wanting, camaraderie and even motivation to even want to do more and show up more, because it's like, what a wonderful way and a wonderful place to be when you're not under tyranny. The other situation was a paid job when I worked for a hospital. I'm still going somewhere with this. I worked for a hospital for 3 years, or I think close to 3 years. A lot of people didn't know that. Yes, I did. Back when, this is again a trillion thousand years ago, but this is back when, I don't know if they are even still operating like that, because that's how long ago it was. Back when there was PBX operating systems with like over 100 lines and stuff, and I was responsible for it. Fun. But anywho, I got pretty damn good. I was doing that on top of managing other things and stuff like that. Anywho, I had a boss there. I don't even know if they're still there. This is how old this is. Okay. Now here's what's going to be even more fascinating to some of y'all. She and I had different religious beliefs. Yet, this lady, and we were both African American, but this lady, I loved her. I loved her. I learned a lot. I'm not saying she was perfect. There may be things I don't know. I can only reference what I recall about the experience working for under her. She was an executive secretary. And she was warm, even when it came to, because we had to do reviews and stuff like that, even the whole gambit of her role as a boss, even when it came to, correction or things of improvement. I think I got several raises there too. I did pretty good there. But she was very warm, very friendly, knowledgeable, very respectful. And, she showed her gratitude, or she showed and exuded that back at me. I'm going somewhere. I didn't get the stank eye. I didn't get the stank vibe. You would have really gotten it because we had different religions. Think about the clash here, especially in the culture that I'm in. And woo, you got, you know what I'm saying? You got somebody that was woo. I was Pentecostal, you know what I'm saying? Christian, you know what I'm saying? Tongue speaking, but woo. Then you have somebody that was a Jehovah's Witness. Could you imagine under normal, y'all know the stank, girl, y'all know how we get. Oh, don't even play. Because we extra on some shit. Cold extra. Way extra. And it's like, but you can't even deal with the real shit right here. Why you sitting over here being extra on this? Just way too much. And meanwhile, while you sitting here fighting and arguing and being extra and side-eyeing, a whole thief then walked right in here and took this right here while you sat there and was extra on this shit right here. Anywho. Loved her. She didn't have a problem. I didn't. And again, I was even more young then. I was even younger and hotter. Okay. That's back when you need no shit. I had stripped down to nothing back then, in the sense of I was going through this phase, and I wouldn't wear no makeup, and I wouldn't wear, and some of y'all may not know that, I wouldn't wear no makeup, I wouldn't wear no fake hair. So my hair was like in a bun, an old-fashioned bun, not the fancy for ones that we seeing now. It was in a regular Compton bun. It was in a yeah. It was in a regular shit with some ultra sheen, bitch. Some of y'all with that ultra sheen cosmetic. Anywho, Yep. And I was, for whatever reason, I was like super bony back then. Good gravy, God. I can see an image. Um, Goodness gracious. I think I was all of, back then, I had went down because I did a whole lot of, it was accidental. I did a whole lot of fasting, like crazy, out of this world, out of control type shit. And it ended up making me get skinny, too skinny. So I think I got down to like a 4, and that was too small for someone like me. But anywho, yeah, my friendliness, my team player, my showing up worked in these incidences. Okay. I can recall when they hired somebody else at the hospital, we had to split per diem. We split the shifts. And I forget, was her name Starla? What was this person's name? Anyway, it doesn't matter. I can't remember. But issues arose. Now, for her, there was some things that would show up. And my boss, she displayed elegance in handling it all. I remember this because we had to have meetings about certain things, to discuss, okay, this is how we're going to handle this. Because people be coming up with shit when they're bothered by you. They start nitpicking. That's when sometimes, yeah. So my boss at that time, she she was elegant at handling it. She really was. And these are things that I remember and appreciate. Those are the good examples. The other examples is, like I'm saying, many of us have been in environments, and I have stories about those too that I'm not going to really feed too much into, where it's like you're trying to show that you want to work hard. You're trying to show that you have an interest in knowing more or moving up. You're trying to, you're displaying your skill set. We talked about this yesterday when I said, I think it was yesterday, and I said, they say confidence is key. But sometimes that bothers people. And this is when you're going to get them coming up with, well, what does that mean? And what is trying to challenge, because they're bothered by your intelligence. They're bothered by your gifts. They're bothered by your capabilities. This is not an open and warm environment, and it wouldn't matter if you are showing yourself friendly in such environments either. So that's the caveat to this story. I 100% agree with, we have to show up. Nobody wants to be partnering up with grumpy grumpersons from Grumpinsville. No one does. Nobody wants to partner with a bitch and moaner all the time. Somebody who's brooding all the time. Somebody who's complaining. No one really does. But the question of the hour is, where's the cutoff? When does it go from trying to show yourself friendly, catching more flies with honey, trying to show yourself to be a team player, to now this is just downright embarrassing. They're making it plain and clear and obvious by way of their behavior and response to you that they have no interest that they do not like you, and that there is nothing you can say or do that's going to change it. So where do we draw the line then? It's something I believe we have to determine for ourselves on a case-by-case basis, whether or not it's misinterpreted as, now this person is, wishy-washy, standoffish. Now this person is, now you're being accused of being grumpy Grumpinson from Grumpinsville, or someone who doesn't want to be a team player, or someone who blah, blah, blah. Sometimes that stuff is interpreted that way because an individual has capped off and come to the place of acceptance and realizing that that person, this group, this organization, this family, this business, this whatever has 0% interest. That they have already made their judgment and their determination on how they view and feel and blah, 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 blah. So the person has come to a place of acceptance. And when you come to a place of acceptance, then you stop feeding energy. Because remember, all of that is energy too. And where do you start self-love and valuing yourself enough to know, much like anything else, the same things that we would tell folks that's trying to break free of addiction, of toxic, dysfunctional romantic relationships. We would say that person needs to learn how to love themselves. And we would say that they need to learn how to stop giving into these situations, to stop feeding and fostering and nurturing these connections. That's what we would say. We would tell these people, okay, you starve it. You want a parasite to die, you cease to feed it. Arguing with it only is going to make the parasite excited. Shit. Ooh, this is good. You know what I'm saying? Excited. Oh, I like it. Cuss me out some more, bitch. You know, it's that's what we would say. Now, in my humble opinion, that applies to everything. But it can be misconstrued and misinterpreted if you think about it. Because just like when you cut off the relationship that everybody encourages you, your picker is off. Stop picking ain't shit niggas. And, you know, and whoa. Okay. And when you do that, nobody talks about the backlash you get for it either. Another video. But when you stop doing that, that means the people, they want to feed off of your energy still. See, this is something that some of you all are going to kind of piece together as time go by, as you muddle your way through the shit show, circus shit show, antics, street theater that is life. You're going to piece it together. Eureka. They don't like me. They don't honor me. They don't respect me. But they want me to be a performing monkey. They want my attention. They want my attention. They want my energy, my interaction, my effort, without giving me honor. They don't like me. They're not vibing with me, whatever the reason is. But they're also bothered if I'm not pining and panting. They're also bothered if I'm not being a weaseling, whimpering beggar. I believe that's a part, and again, this is my humble opinion. I believe that this is unfortunate, and I hate that that's the nature of this realm as it pertains to anything to do with service, helps, type of industries. There's an unspoken, not for everyone. I've met some beautiful, fascinating people who are salt of the earth, who are, core to the bone. It's their heart and soul, and they care, and it's real, and those people I honor. So if you hear this video and you're in these industries and you're not on this weird side of it, know that I'm not referencing you. I'm only referencing the encounters or the people and the situations it applies to. And I have already clearly stated it does not apply to everyone. I'm not implying that it's everyone. It's unfortunate in our narcissistic world that when it comes to, and we know this, I mean, some of us, if we're honest and we look back in different seasons of our lives, depending on what your background is, you know I'm telling the truth. Whereas this undertone of if you're poverty or, you know, whatever those things, and you're seeking, that there's this quiet, unspoken undertone of you supposed to be a whimpering little beggar because after all, you're seeking help. They try to strip you of all of your dignity and honor. And at the same time, then they say, we want to help you yourself get you a good portfolio. Okay. Like I said, unspoken undertone. And then some of the actions, which is what I'm saying, is like the lack of sensitivity to folks that be in these situations. For those of us that's over 50, you know, going back, and you remember the county. Some of y'all, it depends on your age, but if you go back even further, you can recall the inhumane and insensitive, this utter stripping of your dignity, all because you needed assistance. No regard. This, you know, it's like a lack of the need for structure and administration stripped away the humanity and the regard for individuals. And then wonder why people beat up and beat down and say, we want to help build. Do you? Do you? Do you? Do they? Or is this abuse culture? Those of you who went to the military, you know full well what I'm talking about. And again, this ain't a slight on the military. You know, there's good folks in everything. I know that. But those of you who actually went through the military, and especially depends on what branch you went through to and all of that stuff, they strip you. They break your spirit. It's abuse culture. It's to make you comply. And some of us, you know, the way of this world is a lot like that. At the same time, trying to imply that they want to help build you. Do they want to help build you, or they want to help build them? Make you a them. Where do we draw lines? Who determines what those lines are? How long and how far? I remember sitting in therapy for years in different situations, and some of these therapists that I recall that some of them I liked and I loved. But there's one in particular, I loved her. I don't know if she's still even there, African-American lady. And she was sweet as pie, but she would challenge me every week. And she did it respectfully. But she would say, I want brandy. Because, you know, they had a way of how they formulated shit. But she would be like, she would say, She would listen to me talking about another sorry mofo. But she would say, Brandy, Brandy needs to ask herself how many times, how far is she going to go? And she needs to figure that out. How many times is she going to allow a person chances? When does it become I'm just somebody very caring, loving, and forgiving to this is actually hurting me? By continuing to have the door open to this person, talking to this person. How many times? Brandy needs to figure out what's important, what's more important. And such is everything. And nobody talks about this side of it. How many times do people rub you off, reject you, be abrasive, rude, insensitive, disrespectful, negligent? How many times do they roll their eyes, give you the cold shoulder as if we're still in the 7th grade, the 8th grade, 11th grade? How many times? They whisper behind your back and you know it, gossiping, and we pretend to not know it. How many times? Before we realize they ain't fucking with you like that. They playing in your face. How many times do you go and try to have people, again, give you the write-off, the runaround? Before you decide, before I decide, before we decide, we are going to pull our energy back and cease to try. In that incident, I didn't say cease to try indefinitely and in all things. I simply said in whatever that is, because at some point it becomes foolish, doesn't it? Trying and trying. I guarantee you, when I went through these crazy weird seasons and I was trying and 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 trying, I looked foolish. Was being mocked, laughed at, talked about. I looked foolish. The person, the incidences, they were clearly displaying. It wasn't about what they said with their mouth, their behavior was clearly showing they're not that into you. Like the movie. Whether it be they got a higher bidder to come in, it doesn't really matter their reasons. It doesn't matter what happened. The bottom line, they got a higher bidder, a newer model. Usually, I guarantee you, it's almost one of two. A higher bidder, a newer model, or someone with a shared addiction. 3. Boom, mic drop on that one. Guarantee. But none of it matters. What matters is, do we get to the place where we stop trying in these situations so that we can then hold on to these parts of us that operate this way and can still show ourselves friendly in other situations. So we're not expending and spinning the wheel. Bitch, they don't like you. And they don't. Well, you have to show, and how far are you going to go with that? Where do you have a gauge? How far? Because yes, we all have to show ourselves. Show up, show ourselves so people can see versus hear. But we have to determine, and we also have to know what our bandwidth is. And I think I'm going to end it here. For an example, I was in a situation a little while ago, and this was okay. This was an organization that I could really vibe. Like I dig with what they represent. The notion and the premise about, helping women, building women, supporting women to rebuild themselves and their lives, and pouring onto them honor and kindness and support and all those things. I love that. That's in my blood. But like everything else, like what this whole discussion is about, sometimes you find out they ain't fucking with you like that. Whether it be, as I said, some cases is coworker type of vibe, or the others where they're activated, and so they start sowing their seeds and doing their santeria and all those other things to sow discord, to cause that person to see you in a light that's not true, to cause strife, because they're feeling like you might be their replacement. I experienced that here recently. I know I did. I 100% know I did. Because I saw myself becoming a part of something and supporting something. I wanted to be a part of that. Because I felt like that was something I can stand behind. And like I'm telling you all here, but sometimes you have to determine your bandwidth. If you have bigger monsters and fish to fry and bigger problems, sometimes you have to weigh that too and say, hey, I really don't have the bandwidth to deal with petty bitches right now. I don't have the bandwidth to deal with racist bitches sowing seeds with an agenda. I don't have the bandwidth. My life is on the line. I'm a mother of a disabled person. I'm trying to get myself stabilized. I don't really have the bandwidth to ass kiss a situation that's already doomed because of somebody is a narcissist and doing root work and spreading lies and seeds and poison. I don't have the bandwidth for that. And like I had to assess that, many of you are going to realize that's something that we also have to assess, our bandwidth and our priorities. Sometimes the priority is to retain our energy so that we can rebuild our lives. And when people, when there's too much toxicity or some narcissist threatened by you in a situation, and so they're going to try to poison how the boss see you and all this stuff, sometimes you go, okay, I got to let it go. I got to drop it because I don't have the bandwidth right now to be dealing with this kind of penny in the ass shit. While my life is a shambles and I'm trying to rebuild it, I just don't have. And so then you'll be misconstrued once again. Oh, they switched up. No, they didn't switch up. They realized what they were dealing with. And we're naive if we really believe that that's not a thing that's very, very common. People are in fear and survival mode, and not everyone knows how to properly deal with those fears and survival modes. So they get into destructive behavior when they feel threatened. Oh, this person may take my job. Let me start sowing some seeds now. Let me start creating problems now. Let me get the neighborhood involved, all the racists around us. So we can get rid of this now. They may take my job, my free ride. They may take my spot. Person may not even been interested in their spot. You see how that go? Because that is what goes on in people's minds. We then stand the risk of being seen as unfriendly. Because sometimes we have covert passive aggressive stuff that is going on behind the scene. This is how this stuff works. Perform one way in front of the boss or the leaders, and another way when they're not looking. And then twist it up to try to make it seem like that person's a problem when people are threatened by you. This is life. Catch more flies with honey than vinegar. He who wants friends must show himself friendly, but there's always caveats to all of this stuff. There's always a cap off. There's always a level of balance that has to be implemented there, because at some point then you become a flunky. You become that individual that people secretly laugh and talk about, that's always weaseling around, you know what I'm saying, chasing people, ass kissing, trying to fit in, trying to be a part of something so goddamn badly. You become that person. Everybody laughing at you. You still ain't getting nowhere. You're ass kissing. You're going over the top. You know, you're doing all this, and they still don't have no respect for you. They still ain't trying to, you know what I'm saying, hire you. They still, whatever the case may be. It still be, you know, we gotta, man. This is a mixed bag, the world we're in, and we all got something. He who wants friends must show himself friendly. Sometimes people are trying to apply that to get you in performance mode. They want energy out of you too. Because we have to also ask the questions, are they showing themselves friendly? And this is anything. I can recall moving to locations and places that's supposed to be known for they're supposed to be known hospitality. And I received anything but that. When someone is already feeling in the strange place, when people really do operate from that space inside of themselves, they initiate that. Just like we've seen where people go, we're the welcome committee. You know, we're here to make you feel, you know what I'm saying, whatever, because that's hospitality. That's hospitality. It's not it's not the newbie tap dancing in a strange land. It's the people making sure that the newbie feel comfortable. And sometimes the people don't want the newbie to feel comfortable because they feel threatened by the newbie. They have scripts running, all forms of prejudices and discriminatory scripts of all manner that aren't based in no real facts or reality. Presumptions. Oh my God. It's like, dude, why are you even nosy? Why are you not minding your business first and foremost? Number one. Number two. Can you perceive the wickedness? You know, fascinating. Humans are fascinating. You got thieves, you got gossips, you got people, you know, predators pandering and shit. By the way, let me say this. There are some folks out there that's gonna say, hey, you know, that they gotta have meant well, you know, they're willing to give, they gave. Do you all recall like what predators used to do, pervs? You know, shit that we seen on TV and shit, you know, predators and pervs. What do? They be weird, huh? They be in a van and shit. It's always something weird. They be in a weird looking van driving around to parks and places where kids is and offering candy and shit. They're luring motherfucker. They gave. Why did they do that? To get what? Access. And what kind of behavior is that? Predator. What kind of behavior is that? Panderer. What did they exploit? Innocence. What did they exploit? The vulnerability. That does not end with scenarios such as kids with the pervy predators. It's unfortunate. That is an operation and a whole lot of things right in front of us. Giving to have access to stuff that they have no business having access to be able to be pervy and illegally surveil. To be able to dictate somebody's movement without looking like they're really trying to dictate somebody's movement. To have nosy information on stuff that they wouldn't otherwise have information on. To allow people access to things that they have no business accessing, violating HIPAA and a whole lot of other things. See, it's in plain sight. And again, my disclaimer, it's not everything and everybody. Hopefully, I'm sharing a mixed bag of the good experiences that I've had and, you know, bleeding it in with the other stuff that's just as prevalent. But sometimes, listen, y'all out there, sometimes people ain't grumpy. People have stopped trying. Sometimes people aren't lazy, bitter, entitled, They simply realize and come to a place of acceptance of what a people, a place, an organization, a group, what they perceive, what they want, what they don't want, and they accept it, and they go into what I call neutral. They stop exuding desperation and say, I'm just gonna accept this. I'm flat. I'm gonna meh. I'm flat.
Missed call? You kidding me?
Our precious energy could be rerouted. I'm wanting us collective to be able to hold on to these beautiful parts of ourselves that they're trying to beat out of us. And the only way we can do that is understanding that we are not obligated to continue to be a flunky beggared bitch with people that do not have no respect for us. They disrespect us, who we are, what we believe. Those are not folks that we want to continue to try. I'm not saying we have to become mean, and I'm not saying that we have to become like them, and it's just we go flat. We just go flat. So we can preserve ourselves. So we can invest in the proper things that's going to reflect to us what we're giving. And it's up to us to determine that. And it's a case-by-case basis. And we'll continue to have to get okay with being misunderstood, misjudged, and misinterpreted. Because at the end of the day, when you don't act the way someone wants you to act, they're going to have a problem with you.